All right. Well, welcome to this webisode. I'm your illustrious host, Ryan Lake, and joined by the best and brightest we have to offer, Dan Mallard. Dan, thanks for coming on the show today.
You are welcome, sir. I'm glad to be here. This is fun.
We're going to be talking about ManagedMOVE, relocation, corporate relocations, how they work, the technology aspects thereof, and starting off with really the common problems. Dan, you've done numerous moves for our clients and customers and getting them from point A to point B and all the technology required in between. What have you seen are the most common problems companies struggle with?
Yeah, we could really get in the weeds on this and get down to the detail level, but I'm going to spare everybody that today. But there are common problems that I see coming into managed moves at different phases of the process that should be identified up front. And we're going to talk about the process we use, and we're going to talk about the problems we solve. But generally speaking, to get this thing started today, there's some common problems that people have when they move. Number one, when people move into the new space, have they considered everything that's going to go in there from a technology standpoint? And that really means your internet and infrastructure. Have you thought about those things? Have you thought about where they're going to go and how they're going to work? That's probably the most common thing that I see, that people haven't thought about that, or they haven't planned for it, or they haven't coordinated it within an appropriate amount of time to move. So that's really the big one that I see out there.
So in other words, people think about it last, and it's too late.
Well, I think people have it on their to-do list, and so the people I work with, oftentimes it's a week or two out from move day, and they say, "Hey, we're going to move, and we need some help, and it's kind of a sudden deal, and can you guys come and move our technology?" We say, "Sure." And then the first question I ask is, have you talked to your internet provider? Is their internet already available in the space? And if you're building a space you're moving into, that internet is not going to be in there, and it takes several months to get it put in. And if you're moving into an existing space, sometimes it's in there, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's quick to turn on, and sometimes it's not. But oftentimes, unless someone like us or maybe operations is pulled into a move very, months out, sometimes those things can be forgotten. And then it's a real problem trying to get those things thrown in at the last minute. And in addition to that, Ryan, the infrastructure and the cabling that needs to be in place and properly tested and labeled, that stuff needs to be in. And that can take several weeks as well.
So it sounds like preparation is key with any relocation, which I think everybody
Correct.
agrees with. I think that not having a checklist of those sort of action items is a critical component, because without that, you don't know what's going to happen where. How do you time everything correctly?
Right.
I think one of the biggest problems, or one of the most common problems that I see, is just, when do you engage the movers? When do you engage the IT company? When do you engage the copier vendor? You're so focused on building out your space, it's easy to forget the other pieces of those pie that need planning, that need time, because no vendor can just move that afternoon. And if they do, it's really expensive. So there's a time cost benefit analysis. Take some bribes. I'm not going to lie, I've done it before. Like, come on, copier company.
Take some magic.
Let me buy you lunch, and we'll go move a copier real quick, because everybody forgot. So I think those are some real common challenges that companies face, because at the end of the day, it's really easy from a business owner aspect to say, "Oh yeah, I'll let my office manager deal with it, or my executive assistant deal with it," and they've got it handled, and out of sight, out of mind. And they have a real job to do. That's probably keeping them 110% busy already. Throw a corporate move in the mix, and it's impossible.
Yeah, there's one more component I wanted to address as a general common problem that we'll talk about more later, is the expectation that stuff's going to work when people walk in on Monday morning, that it's going to work, it's going to be tested and everything else. Well, there's a lot of components that go into executing a move in such a way where when the team walks in Monday morning, everything just works, right? And so that is a common problem, that you haven't taken that into account. How are you going to set up the technology? How are you going to test the technology? How are you going to verify that this stuff works and is proper before the team even uses it? But that's a very common problem as well. It's not really putting a plan in place to execute that.
Yeah, I remember a friend of mine telling me about how they moved offices. They literally told everybody, just grab everything off your desk, put it in your car, and we'll see you Monday morning.
Right.
And the whole next week was wasted as far as lost productivity, because everybody was busy setting stuff up and kind of getting settled. And it just, I don't think it was an efficient use of people's time, but again, we weren't involved.
Right. Yeah.
That's one of the many gotchas.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree.
Dan, what would you say some of the benefits of our program? Obviously, we've been doing this for many years. Probably since the founding of IronEdge 16 years ago, we've done corporate relocation from a technology aspect and help clients, design and do space planning even. I think the famous story I tell about myself is I helped a client make paint color choices for their new office, because if we didn't do that, the entire schedule was going to go off whack. They had to make a decision on what color the walls were going to be. They had to paint before they could put down the flooring. Everything is so interlined. And that one constraint was delaying our success. But what are some of the other benefits that IronEdge can provide in companies that are making these corporate relocations?
Well, the benefits, I think, align really well to addressing the common problems that we started off with. Those are just general problems that happen all the time. So the benefit to pulling somebody like us in that are experts in moving technology and coordinating a move overall is that when we come in and we execute our plan and we bring in all of our senior team members that are going to do this stuff, we're going to put you in the best position to not have any delays to start work. So there's a productivity benefit to that. There's also a benefit of kind of like what we've been talking about to this point, having expert project managers and an expert team come in to ask the right questions through the entire move process to make sure nothing's forgotten, to make sure that somebody didn't forget wireless access points for the new space or something. So there's a level of expertise that we bring in, which is a benefit to most companies because they don't know the right questions to ask. They don't know the timeline in the schedule that things need to happen on to be accomplished by a certain time. And then sort of wrapped up into all that, we're a single point of communication that can reach out to multiple vendors and coordinate things and ask the right questions and do all this stuff. And it takes that communication off of the moving team. It takes it out of the executive assistant's hands or the operations team's hands, and really, and it puts it on us, and it allows us to do that for you. And those are really, in my experience, the key benefits. But maybe the biggest one is the productivity gain when you move into a new space and it's ready to go. And then even pre-move, having somebody like us execute all these things and coordinate all these things gives productivity back to your team.
I think we're all trying to maximize employee productivity
Exactly.
and organizational productivity. And a move is already disruptive. Right. I mean, it is highly disruptive. I mean, you got to do everything from change stationery to letterhead to notifying vendors and clients of new mailing addresses. There's a lot to it. Mm-hmm. And that's disruptive to any organization. How do we go about ensuring and maximizing productivity, Dan, on these corporate relocations? What do we bring to the table as far as IronEdge Group to really maximize the employee productivity and ensure an amazing experience?
Yeah, and all of these subjects kind of interlace with each other, and we're going to talk about the same themes over and over in today's webisode. But what we do is we want our goal Monday morning is when your team walks in, that they can sit down on their desk and they can get to the internet, they can get to their mail, they can get to their files, and they can do their job, right? And so we built a process around ensuring that is tested from each individual workstation and happens. The same thing with other parts of your business that use technology. I can't tell you the number of times. I'm going to guess maybe 6 to 10 times I've executed a move with a client, and one of their requirements was the conference room technology has to be up and working in the new space on the first or second day. If that's not planned for and executed in a very exacting manner, that can be a real problem when you have a board. I can remember a very specific time in Austin, Ryan, where we did a managed move, and there was a board meeting in the new space on that Monday. And I bet you remember that too. But that's, if you're not taking into account the technology considerations to make that stuff happen in the new space on day 1 or 2, that can be a massive loss of productivity for some very important resources that have come to the board meeting.
The best part about that, if I recall correctly, is we found out about it 3 days before the weekend. Yeah. So on Wednesday, they're like, hey, by the way, Monday in the new space, the board's going to be there for a big meeting. And I think we both looked at each other and said, well, this is going to be a fun weekend. Rut-row. And that was a long Sunday night, if I recall, just testing everything, making sure it was ready to go, because the board was showing up at 8 in the morning to tour the new space and be all excited. I'm like, Okay, well, that's why we have caffeine.
Why we're
We'll
here.
figure this out. That's why we're here. We
You have a
made it
team of
happen. We
experts.
got it done. We had the vendors all lined up, and everybody pivoted and made it work.
Right.
But I think that brings up a really good point of ensuring you have your ducks in a row in the beginning, and that
Right.
all starts with a proper discovery. That in, very intensive conversation with the client. Make sure we're doing that business needs assessment. What are you trying to get out of this move? And truly, the earliest we get involved, the better. Or the earlier we get involved, the better. Because if we know where you're going before you even start space planning, we can really add a ton of value. And that discovery process is, I think, a critical piece of the pie that sometimes we don't have time to do, unfortunately, because of when we're brought in the loop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. And really, this applies to any new site build projects that we do as well. The same thing applies for us and our team. We tell folks when they're building a new site, whether it's for a move or for a new property or whatever it is, we really like to come into the process when dirt starts to turn. That's how early we want to be involved. Now, we know that that's not possible, and for an existing site, that's certainly not possible in existing infrastructure. But we really do want to come in as soon as we can, because there's multiple things that we can add value in the process leading up to the actual work, and a large component of that is the discovery. So our team's going to come in and, like Ryan mentioned, we're going to understand the business needs and the expected business outcomes of this move. When you move to the new space, what do you expect your technology to do? And I say that because it may be different than the technology at the current space. At the current space, you may have one wireless access point. You can all get out to the internet and that's it. Well, maybe in the new space, it's a lot bigger area. It requires a lot more infrastructure. Maybe it's two spaces that are connected via some type of cabling. We need to understand that and plan for it and vet the solutions that are going to go in place, as far out as we can before the move. Another thing that we do related to the discovery is we're going to come in and look at your current infrastructure. We're going to look at everything that you have on the site, whether or not it's server equipment or computing equipment like PCs and laptops or networking equipment. We're going to understand all that. And we're going to wrap our minds around how is this equipment going to be powered down, relocated, stood back up, reused? How are we going to do that in such a way that we're planning for and also mitigating any type of issues? But that takes, a project management team and senior resources sometimes to do that, which really alleviates a lot of risk during the move process, as opposed to just coming and throwing in a box and moving it. And then the stuff doesn't come up or doesn't work when you get to the new site. And then finally, there's a third component of what we do, which is we go to the new site and we evaluate it. There's multiple components that sort of go into that. But generally what we're doing is we're looking at the new site, we're understanding where all the cabling infrastructure goes, and is that the proper place for it to be? We're looking at where internet facilities come into the building, and do they come into the suite that you're at, or do we need to figure that out? We're looking at all those type of things. We're looking at furniture plans, doing a lot of diligence on the new space to make sure on move weekend, there's no surprises. Everything, lives where it's supposed to live, and everything works.
I love it when the clients bring us in early, even before they've selected the new site.
Oh,
a lot of times, if you can involve us and say, hey, we're thinking about these 5-6 different options with our leasing broker.
Yeah.
And we can quickly just run those addresses and be like, yeah, no, we've got fiber there. That's great. Or there's no facilities at all, probably going to cost you a lot more money. And as they're doing their due diligence and they're kind of budgeting for this, having a $3,000 installation fee from a fiber optic internet service provider may not have been in the cards. And that could have been mitigated by just picking a different location early on. And once you get too far down the road, obviously leases are signed and design is happening. It's a little late to say, hey, by the way, there's no internet here, but maybe DSL. Right. And we've run into that in places, right, where there's just copper T1 lines, which seems archaic nowadays, but 10 years ago they weren't. And so I think that's a big thing. If the earlier you can involve your IT team or IronEdge in that kind of site selection process, that business needs evaluation and that infrastructure audit, the better we can get in front of those items and say, let's get creative. Yeah. Let's find ways to make this work and help you with that new site evaluation before we get stuck. And I think it saves money, honestly.
Your example was really, really good, and something that I've seen many times, which is you're moving into a new space and it doesn't have the connectivity you're going to need to do your job. Maybe it does have some old DSL infrastructure, which is super slow, and you can just barely sort of eke by day to day with that. Well, if we're pulled in 4 months out, there's a high likelihood we're going to be able to get a different type of connectivity into your suite 4 months out. And that takes into account permitting and building and digging and all these things that may have to happen to get infrastructure to your site, as opposed to 3 weeks out, there's no way. And then it may be 3 or 4 months from that point where you get the more appropriate connectivity in space. But you're completely right. That's the more time we have to plan and to vet solutions and to understand what's going to happen is always the better.
So we've completed the discovery process. We've had those interviews and talked about business needs. We've looked at, okay, what suite or what building are you going into? Then we start this design phase. And this is my favorite part of a managed move. And it's where my juices get flowing, because we start looking at the space plans. We start looking at the architectural drawings. You know, our team can review all of those A to Z to look and say, okay, how does technology play in how you've done the space plan and space selection? Dan, talk a little bit more about kind of everything we do on the infrastructure side as part of that design phase.
Yeah, without a doubt. So there's multiple things that we come in and add value in that we can help quarterback, and that we should help quarterback. So there's everything from, and we talked about the internet several times already, but internet facilities coming into the space, the low volt cabling, which is your data cabling, understanding where that's going to go, how much of it is needed, how many drops are needed, understanding power in relation to where all the computing equipment is going to sit, understanding from a networking perspective, what do we need hardware-wise to connect everything together? Is it going to be net new? Is it going to be reused gear? Those are very important considerations. Are you going to need more or less technology than you had at the old space? And we're going to take all of those things and kind of engineer a solution with our architecture team to engineer a solution for the new space that takes into account the cabling, the wireless access, the internet facilities, what networking needs are in place, what power needs are in place, what security needs are in place, what needs to be in place for third-party vendors, maybe a music system, maybe conferencing technology. We're going to put a solution in place that supports all of that. And we're going to do it as a single point of management for all of those things. We're going to be able to gather bids. We're going to be able to suggest vendors. We're going to be able to vet proposals. And we do all of that as part of our solution.
I think it's an important part, because when you get into that design phase, budget moves the design.
Yes, it does.
So it's like the tail wagging the dog. If you've got a budget, give us the budget.
Right.
Okay, let's design a solution that's the best bang for our buck.
Correct.
And so that comes in that design phase. And it really is all of those sub vendors, the audio visual guys that are experts there, the low voltage cabling guys that are experts there. Let's get a couple bids from all of them and all our different, companies we've worked with over the years to make sure you're getting the best bang for buck for your relocation, because a move is a great time to upgrade.
It is.
And this is that opportunity. Like, you're already disrupting the organization and picking up and moving from point A to point B. Now is a great time to fix all the things that you just had never gotten around to fixing. The complaints about the conference room or boardroom touchscreens not working right. Well, let's rip those out and put in new ones. It's part of the capital expenditure anyway. Let's find a way to fix all the previous annoyances in our new space. So we're coming in and being really excited about everything just working. And this design phase is exactly where we can do that and work with the client to come up with a great budget to get things rocking and rolling so that new site is better than the last.
Yeah, there's a nice thing that sometimes happens when we execute a move, which is sometimes our client will budget for and be able to put in new technology in the new space, a new firewall, new switching, things like that, right? And if we can get that stuff as net new, oftentimes we can have that hot and working before the move even happens, which is terrific. And it's nice to go in move day and everything on, you can already get to the internet.
It removes so much risk.
It really does.
You got everything pre-staged that you can. And we could put that in the week before the move weekend. It really removes a ton of risk to ensure that everything just works.
Yeah, we suggest that when we can.
Talking about move weekend, we move into kind of that implementation phase of okay, hey, it's move time. The movers are going to show up. What is IronEdge doing to ensure that implementation goes well?
That's a great question. I'm going to take it back one day in the timeline because I want to tell you guys about something that we do to prepare for that day. So a day or two before the move, our team goes on site, and we literally take a picture of every workstation. And the reason being is when we tear down your workstation and pack it up, which I'll talk about in a minute, but then when we unpack it and lay it out, we've already documented what it looks like. We know what you want your workstation to look like, which can save.
Now you're giving away the secret sauce here, Dan.
I am. This is a little bit of our secret sauce, but it's something that happens before the move day. So we've gone in, we've documented the way everything looks. We've noted what equipment is at each workstation. And really what I see with my clients is they're packing up their IT equipment the day before the actual move day. So really from a logistics standpoint, you're packing, on Wednesday, and then that stuff's getting pulled out Thursday or Friday. So you've been packing, you have everything sort of put together and ready to go. And our team has got all your technology packed and ready to go, but then move day comes. Right. And so what we found is that it does require sort of a quarterback of sorts to come in and even from the technology perspective, make sure that things are, being moved around appropriately, that the networking and server equipment is being taken down and appropriately moved and transported around. You need a quarterback, whether it's an internal person in conjunction with us or us, specifically for the technology portion, to make sure things are sort of happening in the intended way. Now, there's different ways that we make that happen. We create checklists, and we take pictures, and we create blueprints with labeled offices on them to help the move team move stuff in and out of offices. But really, we're helping to manage the move vendor in a way, but also assisting all the other vendors that are there doing things, especially at the new space. So we're an IT quarterback that works with all the vendors on the actual move day. And then we'll say that's everything moving out, and then moving in, same thing. We're in the new space. We're helping guide where stuff is being set. We're making sure stuff is unpacked. We're making sure stuff is tested. But really, it's having a quarterback and your advocate, if even for the technology, they're on site, making sure everything happens according to the way we planned it.
Yeah, I think we're going through. So on the new site, we're making sure that the vendor installation management's happening. Mm-hmm. We've got, if you're deploying net new infrastructure that we can put in prior to move, great. We're getting that done on the new site. So we're working in tandem, both new and old.
Correct.
So at the existing site, documenting and making sure we've got pictures of everything, going through our checklist, making sure folks are packing accordingly. Everything's securely packed. That's another piece. Make sure nothing breaks in transit.
Right.
Movers are sometimes not as gentle as we'd all like them to be. But then we're kind of dual homed. We're at the new house, right, making sure everything is plugged together and the vendors are getting everything done. The general contractors are mopping up all their work and any change orders or punch list items, as well as making sure the existing site is all ready and buttoned up, ready to pack up and put in the truck. So it is a real, intense process in that implementation phase where it's go time.
Yeah, it really is. I like that you brought up and pointed out that it really is a two-site operation there for several days. We normally have a team doing the packing and doing the coordination of stuff moving out, and then we have a totally separate team, several people at the new site getting stuff tested, receiving stuff as it comes in, getting technology set up, and that's two different sites for several days, and that is very interesting to point out, because if you don't pull in somebody like us, or you don't have a robust technology team, well, who's at each site, or who's doing that work? So it's something to consider for people.
Well, and you may not have the staff internally that can be two places in once. I mean, if I look at this from a kind of a logistical standpoint, like most internal IT teams, most internal office management teams, like they're already busy with their day job. You throw a move on top, and it's just so much extra work that stuff's going to get dropped.
Right.
No harm, no foul, but like that just happens. That's because they can't be dedicated to that project because they still have their full-time job to do. It's an added component of stress to those staff members. So it's a real benefit to shift off those workloads and say, hey, we're going to work with a third party that's going to really handle the change management related to this move, manage it A to Z. Yes, as a client, you have to be involved. You have to make decisions. So you can't be completely turnkey, I'm out of this. But at the same time, you wouldn't do that for your personal home. You're going to go and shop and then help with the movers, make sure they hang this picture where you want it and that sort of stuff. The same sort of situation happens in corporate relocation. Clients need to be involved, but we can take a lot of the stress out of it, a lot of the scheduling, follow-up, and chase that happens with any corporate relocation because of the multitude of vendors. Someone has to manage those. I think another really important point, Dan, is that on Sunday, when everything's unpacked and done, we don't just walk away. Right. So we've got our team there on Monday morning, all day Monday, pretty much, for that, what we call the first day back support. Right. We're back in the office. We're there walking around, make sure everybody's happy. Did everything get put back the way you want? I remember this one situation with, even with our checklist, where we took photos of the employee's desk and we had it exactly the way they used to have it. They got in at Monday morning. We're like, yeah, no, given that I'm in this new office and my window's over here, I want everything changed and moved around. We're like, not a problem.
We got it. Yeah.
Not a problem. We'll move that around for you. So that stuff happens. And that's why we have the team there, because we want to make sure all the cables are dressed and it looks nice and neat. But inevitably, someone's going to want something slightly different than what they had before, because they're in a new building with a new desk or a new layout, and they want to change things up. So we've got to have that team there for that Monday morning or Monday all day. And if we're, have the time, we'll even bring donuts or breakfast tacos. It's just what we do. It's about making a move, which is normally so stressful. How do we make it an experience? Like we say around here, everyone deserves great experiences, and a corporate relocation or managed move is a great opportunity to give your staff kind of a party. I like to make it fun, right? Welcome to the new office. Here's new swag. Here's new, we've got breakfast and lunch catered, all this sort of stuff happening, so that it becomes more of an employee appreciation event of welcome to your new home than it is like a stressful event. We want to remove that stress and anxiety in these corporate relocation projects so it can be a great experience.
That's a terrific point. I see we're on the closing remarks slide here.
I thought it worked well.
There's one more thing I just wanted to point out to the listeners is, how can you best mitigate, plan for risk, right? And so that goes for all IT projects and all projects in general. How have you mitigated risk to the project? And the risks for a move project would be, you can't work, right? That's the risk. You can't work. You're not efficient. You can't do your job, or some component, 2 or 3 people can't work, or whatever it is, right? Well, how do you mitigate the risk? Well, either you have the capability internally to do all the stuff we've talked about, and you have experts on staff that can sort of walk the same walk that we do, or you mitigate the risk by pulling in somebody like us, or listening to this webinar and taking super detailed notes, and then going to your team and say, I've got it figured out. We've got the secret sauce. But how do you understand and mitigate the risk? And then, what can you do if you have a future move to put yourself in a position where you have a successful move, right? That's really the problem we're trying to solve here. And by pulling in a company like us, or leveraging your internal team, you want your managed move to be successful. You want it to be fun. You want it to be a party, and you want it to celebrate the new space. And if you've mitigated your risk, you've done that. And really the tidbits we've talked about today are, how do you get there? We'd be glad to help you. Anybody, I'll say this too, when we're out in the field and we're talking to new potential clients, I do talk about our managed move product line. We call it managed move. It's an actual, thing we do and a thing we sell. And it is a differentiator between our peers. And I like to talk about it because it's what I've seen in my almost 10 years of being at IronEdge is similar sized peers don't have this service. So when you're looking at your move and you're trying to plan it, look for a partner that has this type of service, and it'll eliminate the risk and put you in a position where you can have that party on Monday morning.
So if your company's planning an expansion or relocation, minimize disruption to your business and ensure a seamless transition of your infrastructure with IronEdge's Managed Move solution. With IronEdge in your corner, you can worry about your business instead of your move. Dan, I want to thank you for joining us on today's webisode. This was a lot of fun and great informative content for our audience.
Thanks for having me, Ryan, and I'm sure we're going to do another one soon.
Guaranteed.